So today we're going to be unboxing and installing this legend mirror from our friends from Acumen. So in the box we do have instructions for the app. You could do some handy stuff with the app. The mirror is, there's the mirror, and in this box we have all the hardware that will be needed for the installation. Now let's take a look quickly at the connections on the mirror. The mirror has 5 connections. One of them is the power wire. The other one is the GPS. Now it doesn't have like a GPS to locate your vehicle. It's a GPS blogger, which will tell you what direction you're going, how fast you're going, and where you're going, but not necessarily, where your car is. It's just for longitude and latitude. And then there's the box. What the box is that's what goes connected onto your Acumen cam box, and that's what controls your 8 different accessories. And then you do have your 2 spots for your cameras. ADH1 is the rear camera, and ADH2 is your middle camera. So once you have it mounted, you would connect your included wire harness onto your power. Obviously connect your 2 cameras, one wherever you like to mount them to. Traditionally, one goes in the back, one goes in the front. Connect your GPS, and obviously there's the mounts that you're going to need. Now depending on what vehicle you have, you will maybe need a slightly different mount. So contact our friends at Acumen and they'll be able to help you out to let you know exactly which mount you're going to need for your particular vehicle. Okay, so now that we know what's in the box and we have a general idea of how we're going to plug in the mirror, let's take a look at what tools we're going to need. Now for the electrical component on it, we're going to need some splicers to splice the ends, some wire cutters, some crimpers. This is my favorite tool. It has all 3 of them, so there's no need to have the rest. But this is just showing you in case that you don't have this particular one. And then if you're using this heat shrinking butt connectors, which I highly recommend, especially if it's an off-roading vehicle, even if it's a pickup, Jeep, you go in the water, I highly recommend the heat spliced butts because it seals really tight and it avoids from water getting in. You will need your lighter. You can use any typical lighter. I just have this nice little butane torch. We're also gonna need to identify where we're gonna be getting our power source and where we're gonna be getting our key source or our ACC. So for that, we could use a traditional multimeter to figure out, what has power and when it has power. There's also these handy tools. This lights up when there's power, so you connect it to a negative, and then you touch on the fuses, and it lights up when there's power. One of the handy tools, one of the cool things about this one, it also reads voltage. So when you tap on the fuse, it'll read you how many volts there is, which is pretty convenient. And we're going to be, once we jump onto the truck, we're going to be talking about how we're going to be using these tools. I'm just letting you know what we're going to need right here. And then for the mounting of the mirror itself, these tools may differ. These are the tools I used. I am installing on the Jeep Gladiator. So the most traditional one I see on actually most of the vehicles I've installed this is a 10 millimeter on the A-pillars. Most of them, you pop the little cover, they're 10 millimeters. So this may be something that you may need for all the cars. There's a popper. This helps me pop the plastics from the pops. Gives me good leverage. There's a 30 Torx. The 30 Torx is going to be to take off the screws from your original mirror, so you can put your new bracket. And then there's a T20, Torque 20, and this is for all the little screws that hold on to the panels of the upper panel and your side mirrors and stuff like that. Now along with your hard wiring kit comes this fuse tabs. These fuse tabs are very handy. Traditionally, before these things were around, we would find a cable that was connected to a switch. We would splice that cable and run a cable externally, so that way we can get signal for our AC or for power. No need to do that. With these, you just go to your fuse box, you identify which has power, you put it on the fuse, and then it gives you power. No need to tap onto any wires. Now in the particular, with this particular install, for my power cable, I am gonna be using this inline fuse holders, also also waterproof. And like I said, once we get onto the Jeep and we start mounting these things, you will know what I'm using this for. And then in my case, just because I already have a fuse tab for a different accessory, I'm gonna be using this T connectors. This basically lets me get power or connect onto a cable that already has current going through it already. So this is only for my particular case. This is not gonna be the case for everybody. Now, if you already have a car that you already ran a cord for your AC, then it would be handy to have one of these. That way you don't have to try to find a different fuse to essentially get the same result. So I'm briefly gonna go over how to mount the mirror onto your actual vehicle. Now, it may differ from car to car, but the general process will be the same thing. So let's go ahead and take a look. To get started, we're gonna need to remove the 8 pillars plastic cover on both sides. Usually you're gonna run wires on both sides, so we got to remove both sides, usually held by 10 millimeter. And there's a plastic cap. You pop the plastic cap, and then you remove the 10 millimeter, and then there's some clips. You should be able to pull the 8 pillar plastic right off. Now for this particular vehicle, the Jeep has a plastic that goes all the way across. In order to remove this plastic, you do need to unmount the wind visors. There's a T25, 2 T25s here and 2 T25s on the other side. And then like the 8 pillar, there's clips. So you're gonna carefully pull the clips down. Now you're gonna have access to the whole top of the car. And then you should have already removed the 8 pillar on the other side. So now you have access, it's open to start running the wires and putting everything nice and neat. Okay, now that we ran all the wires, mounted our mirror, now it's time to connect our wiring harness. Now our wiring harness has 3 different cables. We have a yellow cable that's gonna go to our switch. Then there's a black cable that goes to our ground, and then there's a red cable that goes to our continuous power. Now for continuous power, if you're wiring up your harness where the fuse box is right next to the battery, you can just plug in the continuous power straight to the battery, as you know we're used to, because we know that battery always has continuous power. And the ground obviously goes to the battery. Now let's say you're in a car where the fuse box is not near the battery. Usually smaller compact car SUVs have it underneath the driver's side, of the steering wheel. There's a compartment underneath that has a fuse box. The way we would find out how we can find continuous power is obviously we open up our fuse box. We're gonna take our voltage reader or multimeter, and then we're just gonna go fuses. Now we need to put in one from 10 to 15 amps. So I'm gonna go to this one that has 15 amps, and we can see there's continuous power. So this would be a good spot for me to put our fuse tap and connect our continuous power. Now there's some that have this rail of continuous power. For example, if you see right here, all of these have continuous power. So you could put a fuse holder like I did here and connect it to either anything that has power. That's our continuous power. For this case scenario, I'm just gonna put it straight to the battery. I will include a link onto where I got those fuse holders. Now to find our switch or our ACC, our fuse box usually tells us what fuse. You can look for one that says ACC, and then use that one to connect your ACC. But before that, you want to verify. So as we can see, there's some right here that have continuous power, some don't have continuous power. The ones that don't have continuous power, that means they're powered by the switch. Now I already have a fuse tab here for another accessory I have on this vehicle, so we're gonna go ahead and test it. As you can see right now, we have no power. Now we're gonna press our switch, and now we have power. So this would be perfect fuse tab to use for our ACC. So you know, to put the fuse tab, we obviously get our fuse tab. We put our fuses. This is a 15 amp, so I'm gonna put two 15 amps on there. And then we connect it onto our fuse tab, and that is on the other end. We're gonna connect our accessory. In this case, since I already have it, I'm just gonna merge these two together, and now I'm gonna have power for the switch signal. Now that we identified where we're going to be plugging in our cables, let's take a quick recap. So here's our yellow cable. It is connected to the one we confirmed that's controlled by the switch. It's just a quick fuse tab. The red cable goes straight to a battery. Remember, you do need a 15 amp fuse, so we do have a fuse holder, and it does have a 15 amp. And then the black wire went straight to the negative. So now we have all three wires connected. Now the perfect chance is to go and test our mirror. If everything powers up correctly, it should be good to go. Here we are inside the vehicle. I am going to power my vehicle to verify that the mirror does turn on. You know, it's always good to trust your work, but it's also good to verify your work. So here we go, the mirror is on. Now we're also gonna test that and make sure that all of our cameras are working properly. There we go, we have all three cameras working properly. That means everything was connected properly. There's the two setup, there's my front camera, and there's my rear camera. Another thing I wanna do is I'm gonna go ahead and put my vehicle on reverse to verify that. There we go. As you can see, we see our guidelines. That means it's getting signal that I am in reverse. I'm gonna go ahead and put this back. Now we're back to our rear camera. Perfect. That means all of our cameras are working properly. The mirror is getting power as it should. Now the last test I want to do is I'm gonna turn off my vehicle, and once I turn off my vehicle, it should the mirror should power down. The last thing we want is that your mirror stays on and drains your battery. It's never fun that you wake up and you need to jumpstart your vehicle. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn off my vehicle. It will take a couple of seconds for the vehicle to time. Most vehicles have some time attached to it. There we go. It says it'll turn off in 5 seconds. And the mirror turned off, so that means that everything is wired properly. Okay, so when we did the fuse tabs on the Jeep, there's something in particular that I didn't cover too much into detail that I do think it's important to cover. So let's go ahead and take a look at it now. So here's a fuse tab. This is how it usually looks. Obviously, this goes where your fuse used to go. Here, your fuses go here, and this is where you put your accessory. In this case, it's gonna be the power or the ACC for the mirror. Now, as you see, the fuse tab has 2 spots to put fuses. Many people think, oh, you know what? I'm just gonna you know, put the fuse tab in there. If it's a 15 amp one, I'm just gonna put a 15 amp and I should be good. That's not the particular case. Let's say your whatever accessory in your vehicle wants to draw out 15 amps, and then you put in something else that wants to draw out 15 amps. It's not gonna be enough. So there would be a drop of current, and you could experience some difficulties with either accessory. Either the mirror is not going to turn off, or whatever you hooked up onto is not going to turn off. So it is very important to put 2. So for example, the Legend mirror requires anywhere from 10 to 15 amps. So if you use a 15 amp fuse, you're gonna put the fuse that you took out right there and add another 15 amps. That way there's gonna be 30 amps here, and whatever you tap into is gonna have all the amps it requires, and the Legend mirror will have enough current, and you don't experience any difficulties. Now, in theory, you could also put one bigger fuse. So for example, if it's 2 15s, you can put 130. You know, it just depends on your preference. You know, there's 2 spots, so I usually just like to put, if it's a 10, I put 2 10s. If it's a 15, I put 2 15s. But it's very important. If you don't do this, you can have issues. You know, sometimes the Legend mirror will turn off randomly, or it cannot turn on at all, because if whatever else you tap into is using currents, there's not gonna be enough current for the mirror. So, you know, it won't have enough power, or if it does power up, some of the features inside the Legend mirror may not be may not be available because it doesn't have enough current through. So just make sure whenever you do a fuse tap, always put 2 of whatever it is. So if you tap it into a 10 amp, put 2 10 amps. If you tap it into a 15 amp, put 2 15 amps. So that way there can be enough current going through. Okay, so now that we tested our mirror, the mirror does turn on when you turn on the vehicle. We get image out of all 3 different channels. That means all 3 different cameras are working properly. For our rear camera, when we put the vehicle in reverse, you should see those parking guidelines. And then when you remove the vehicle from reverse, those guidelines should disappear. What that means is that the mirror is working properly, the wiring was done properly. And then when we turn off the vehicle and the legend camera turns off, usually after a couple seconds, that means our wire harness was installed correctly and your mirror won't drain your battery. At that point would be the perfect point that once you verify that everything works properly, we're gonna close down the vehicle, put your plastics back, run all the wires nice and neat. And then once your vehicle is all closed up, you're ready to go out and enjoy your mirror. If you have any questions regarding the product, feel free to contact our friends at Acumen. They will be able to help you out with mounting situations, different camera situations, or any question you have, feel free to reach out. They're there to help you out. And don't forget to follow Orbi Customs